Ranking.
Hello and welcome back to the TPO Ranking Show. This is round 33 of the show, our second last show of the year. We have decided we'll do one more week to wrap things up, but this is a big show. You want to pay attention, you want to listen, you want to watch this one because we are talking TPO or Jake Shorter vision. We'll get into that shortly. We've got some games to recap, some games to preview as well. There's only a couple left, FFA Cup. But yeah, as always, I am joined by a man who loves numbers, who sees beauty in numbers. Jake, how are you this evening?
I'm very well, Cody. How are you?
Yeah, doing awesome. Thanks, Jake.
I've got no response to that little comment.
Well, you do.
That is
Yeah.
Absolutely true.
It wasn't a dig, Jake. It was
Nope.
more just a comment.
I can't explain it, but you're absolutely right. There is a beauty there.
Okay, awesome. I suppose there's not too many numbers to talk about tonight. The middle of the show, guys, if you are listening and wondering what we're going to be talking about tonight, it's about, Jake wrote this document called the TPO, or the Pecking Order Vision, maybe, Jake, 12 months ago, maybe a little longer?
Probably 18 by now,
18,
yeah.
okay, geez, it's gone quick, eh? And it was about the state of Australian football, as Jake sees it, and perhaps some ways to fix that, to improve on it, and we're going to go into it tonight. It's talking about, largely, I'd say, Jake, how would you wrap it up? Maybe summarise about creating a whole of Australian football pyramid?
Yeah, so it's probably a lot of the stuff that's in the Twitter, Facebook forums and everything else at the moment. Promotion, relegation, second division, all the stuff that kind of sits in that Australian football pyramid discussion.
Okay, so we're going to get into the weeds of that. I'm basically going to not play devil's advocate, just more of a Q&A. I'm going to ask Jake some questions. He's going to answer them. This whole document is written out. It's how many pages, Jake? Did we ever?
Yeah, you called it a document. It's probably more of an essay. I think it ended up at about 20, 23 pages.
That's
something
not too
like
long.
that.
Yeah, that's decent.
It's a good half an hour read for sure.
Yeah, definitely, and it gets into the weeds. But so we're just going to cover it tonight, but maybe not in too much detail. And I'm thinking when Jake gets some time, we're going to get into maybe update it, and then we're going to chuck it on our website on the blog page. So if anyone wants to download it, because it's on an existing blog.
I think what we'll say, Cody,
Yep.
is it is up there at the moment in the same kind of, nothing's changed since the one we put up 18 months ago.
Yep.
By the time this comes out on Wednesday, I assume you'll be Wednesday,
yep.
Cody. We'll have. We might try and get an updated version on our website.
Current
so maybe
website,
point people to that, Cody, and
Cool.
we'll make sure we have it ready.
Yeah, if anyone wants to grab it, it's in PDF form. It will be on there, tporankings.com. Jake, let's jump into part one, and that's the recap. We previewed 3 games, big games, 2 FFA Cup and 1 NPL Finals series. I'll jump right in here. So we had Bentley Greens and Heidelberg in the FFA Cup. We predicted a Greens win. Oh, Jake, I love the predictions this week, by the way. Out of 3, yeah, we'll get.
I saw the summary, but yeah, let's get to that.
So we predicted a Bentley win. The supporters on Instagram stories 55%. So it was close, but he went for Heidelberg. Bentley Greens got up 1-0 towards the end of that game, and this is a big one in the move. Jake's commented here that Bentley Greens up 1 spot to 9th on the rankings, and what that means is they are now, as it stands, the highest non-A-League club in Australia. So they jumped Apia. And Heidelberg remain in 11th, so it's Bentley, Apia, and then Heidelberg. And that Apia are involved in the second game here, so Apia versus Adelaide United in the FFA Cup. It went, I'm sure you know the result, Adelaide got up 2-0. We predicted an Adelaide United win, and 81% of you guys on Instagram voted for Apia. I couldn't believe that when it came through. I went, are you guys sure? Is this a typo?
Somebody
no, it's
misread it, yeah. Usually we
Yeah.
get 1 or 2 that vote, against the favourites, even when it's very one-sided.
Yeah.
But to have it this heavy in Apia's favourite was a big surprise.
I suppose they did get over victory, and everyone sort of just went stuffing on going for Apia.
Maybe I thought I didn't vote in your 81%, Cody, but in our little Facebook tipping competition, I definitely voted for Apia, so I was wrong. But I was with you, the supporters, this time.
Yeah, there you go. So anyways, we got that right, and the supporters got it wrong. That's 2 out of 2. Apia fall, as we just mentioned, back down, as we just mentioned, to 10th. And Adelaide United move up 1 spot to 3rd in the rankings. Congratulations, Adelaide United, ahead of a big A-League season. And the third game, which was played on, I don't know, it's Monday here, public holiday, big weekend. It was on Sunday afternoon, wasn't it, Jake? Down in South Australia. And Campbelltown Lions. Campbelltown got up 2-1. Congratulations, Campbelltown City. NPL champions and a spot in the FFA Cup round of 32 next year. That's awesome. That means, hopefully, definitely, we're going to see 2 South Australian teams, NPL sides, which is awesome. They deserve it. So,
if not more.
There's still
time for the FFA to change the allocation, so you never know.
you never know. We predicted our Campbelltown City win, so we got 3 out of 3. The supporters, 81%. Again, there's that number again. Lions, so they got that wrong too. So supporters, you got 3 out of 3 wrong. We got 3 out of 3 right. That's
not a good week.
I don't think that's happened before, but
no.
Anyway, as a result of that game, Campbelltown City move up 1 spot on the TPO rankings to 14th in the country. What a season they've had! What a season! Overtaking Central Coast Mariners, Lions fall just the 1 spot to 18th. So a great season for Lions too. Congratulations to those 2 clubs. I cannot wait January, February March for these new seasons to start kicking off. Jake, this is our first year of the TPO rankings, and it's been great to sort of get acclimatised with all the clubs around Australia, start to follow all the big clubs, and I'm really interested to see how the clubs go next year, even more so than I was this year, because I didn't, to be honest, at the start of this year, I didn't know half of these clubs were. I'm not ashamed to say it, Jake, not ashamed. So as I just mentioned, we got 3 right, you guys got 0 out of 3, that takes us to 73 on the running leaderboard, the supporters on 63. And I think there's only 2 more games to go, so we've definitely won that one for the season. Jake, do you need to point out any other rankings, or there's only sort of those games, wasn't there?
No, those were the only games of the week. So the only other kind of movements that you'll see are some of the interstate adjustments, like Lions losing to Campbelltown City means that all Queensland clubs will fall very slightly on the rankings, and all South Australian will move up very slightly. So there's nothing major, but it'll shift things here and there.
Jake, I'm going to change things up. It's on our run sheet to go into the vision, but we're just going to go straight to part 3 of the show. We're going to move them around for the 2 FFA Cup games. Jake, why don't you take us away here?
Will do, and I haven't checked the dates of these, but from memory, this first one is Friday night coming, Cody. So that's Bentley Greens versus Adelaide United, which is, well, for me anyway, the more interesting of the 2. But as you'll see in a minute, the All A-League affair is also an interesting one. Mm-hmm. Bentley Greens, as we just mentioned, currently the highest ranked non-A-League club in the rankings, coming in at 9th. Adelaide moved up to 3rd after their win the other night. So 9th versus 3rd in the country. At home, Bentley Greens, we're giving them a 24% probability of winning, and Adelaide a 55%. So, not Adelaide favourites, but I wouldn't say that Bentley Greens are it wouldn't to me be a massive cup set if Bentley Greens got up. Although obviously semi-finals, Adelaide getting closer and closer to their season and getting fitter and fitter, so they'll be very tough to beat. And
Jake, that is at 7:30 on Friday night.
Yep. Fair enough. And then the other one is on, I think, Saturday, Cody.
Saturday at 7:30, yep.
Yeah, so usually these All A-League affairs are in the FFA Cup not as interesting because they tend to treat it more as a pre-season, test game, those sort of things. But it is the Sydney Derby and it is the semi-final, so they won't be taking it too lightly. And from memory, I can't remember the stadium. Have you got that in front of you, Cody, the venue?
I just clicked on it. It didn't come up. I think it was like Penrith or something?
It's one of the local grounds there, so it's going to be quite a tight ground, I guess. So a lot of supporters crammed into a smaller space, so that'll be something to see, I think. And Western Sydney currently ranked 5th. Sydney still ranked as the highest, as the number 1 club in the country right now. And even at home, or as the home team, at least from the rankings point of view, the Wanderers only have a 16% chance of winning, and Sydney a 66% chance. So. Yep. Heavily weighted in Sydney FC's favour. And those numbers are interesting, Cody, because if I was to say to you it'll be a bigger upset for the Wanderers to win than it would be if Bentley Greens beat Adelaide, you probably wouldn't believe me, but that's what the TPO algorithm is suggesting.
Who put this algorithm together, Jay?
Ridiculous.
Yeah, crazy stuff. Yeah, so just the 2 games, FFA Cup, and that's why the show is wrapping up. This will be our second last week. We'll recap those games next week and do a full recap of the year, perhaps. That's why we're coming to an end. We're not going to be covering an A-League season too heavily, so we'll be having a nice off-season and coming back early next year. So, Jake, this is the main crux here. We're about 10 minutes into the show. We've got another 10 to 15 to go. I'm going to ask you some questions here. It's all related to the TPO Vision document. Again, guys, it is on the web. It's not right now, but by the time you're watching it, we'll get a version up on tporankings.com if you want to have a look, have a read, share it around. We do encourage that, and we definitely encourage feedback. We'll come back to that a bit later. Jake, to start with, why the document? Why did you write it? What is perhaps wrong with the current state of Australian football?
It's a big question. I won't go into the full detail and give you all of my thoughts, but I guess why was really... It's something that I'd been thinking about and talking about with people and, online forums and that sort of thing, talking about some of the issues for a long time. And I don't know, I just kind of had these ideas swirling around in my head, and one day I decided to write it down. And I think I probably shared a version with you, which was a couple of pages long. And then I think we just decided, if I'm going to put that down, I may as well go through and do the whole bloody thing and talk about all the issues and how it can all fit together. So really what it is a full brain dump from me about what Australian football could be if we kind of took off or put to the side all the current issues in Australian football and all the constraints and whatever else, and just said, what do we want it to be, or what could it be if we kind of had a longer term vision for where we could be if we had the right leadership and the right support and resources and everything. So kind of taking away all of those constraints and saying, what would it be in an ideal world? And that's kind of where it all started.
And Jake, is anyone, to your knowledge, because you do spend a bit of time in forums and on Twitter, following the journos and stuff, has anyone sort of done this before?
At least not that I've... I mean, I shouldn't say they haven't, because there's certainly people out there and people like us, football fans who have put their thoughts forward, and some have blogs and that sort of thing that have shared them as well. So I'm certainly not the first or the only person, but probably not exactly what you're asking. But what maybe somebody should be asking is, has the FFA done it? And the short answer there is no. I mean, somebody listening might think, well, they had that, they call it the whole of football plan, a good, 6 or 7 years ago, where they set out a 20-year vision or a 20-year plan, and it had no detail, it had no, it basically was nothing. There was a lot of fluff, and we want to be the number one code in Australia, but nothing to say how they're going to do it. So it was, it lacked a lot of detail, and even the detail that was there, I think a lot of people were quite disappointed with it.
Jake, I wonder if internally the FFA have something like this, or is it just, it doesn't seem to be that way, but surely they've got something similar?
I don't know. You'd like to think so. I doubt it, to be honest. I mean, I'm kind of going just off, watching. There's a lot that you can actually learn and kind of interpret's the wrong word, but you can
infer.
Infer. That's what I'm after. You can infer a lot if you follow over a long period of time a lot of the media releases and the commentary and the things that come out of the FFA on Twitter and other sources, and then read kind of a lot of the comments from the people who you can, after a while, you get a sense for who knows more than other people, and it's just, I can't give a short answer as to what it is, but you can just kind of watch it long enough that you get a feel for it, and the FFA seems very reactionary. They tend to respond to some of the criticism and the things that are happening at the time, and this whole Congress stuff that's going on, and A-League expansion is a great example of that. If you go back and look at the timing of FFA's expansion announcements, every time it has been in reaction to something else that is happening, and they're trying to, put a positive spin on football or something like that. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. At a high level, Jake, what are you proposing?
Yeah, so kind of as we touched on at the top of the show, Cody, it really is all about this Australian football pyramid. And the reason for that, one question you kind of asked before was, which I didn't answer, was what's wrong with the state of football in Australia? And there's a whole host of things, but a couple of the things which kind of started this for me was just to say, there's some things that we want to get right that will have bigger impacts on other things. So there's some small issues, but I think a lot of them can be kind of summed up in terms of how we do things like player development, coach development, even all the other people like a referee development and admin people in Australian football, all those sort of people. But also probably the biggest issue for me is that you have this elite level of football, 10 clubs that are completely separated from the rest of the pyramid, and all of these other clubs that either were in the old NSL or have ambition to be at the top level, or even those that don't but just want to be kind of the best at that next level, they've all been excluded, and there's a clear gap or a ceiling and a floor there, and there's real lack of incentive and inclusiveness for those lower clubs to kind of push to get any further because they can't. So that's kind of the big thing that sits underneath all this. And look, for those that want more detail on that, go and read what I've written. I've kind of gone in, I'm summarising a page and a half of my thoughts on this in a couple of sentences. So what we've done is we've looked at the full Australian football pyramid and said, there's a global standard for a reason, and it works other places. We're different. Everybody throws around the word unique when we talk about Australian football. I get it. There's things that are different, but the fact is it works everywhere else. And there is nothing, you can't possibly tell me that we have the hardest or the most issues or reasons why this won't work out of every single country in the world. I mean, anybody that starts with that, I think that's a defeatist attitude. So really what we're talking about is we've got the A-League, we've got the NPL, which is obviously state-based, and some states have promotion relegation and they're all linked below that, Victoria being a good example. We're talking about how do we close that gap and make it an entire football pyramid. And this is not a short version that you asked me for, Cody,
No,
but I'll wrap it up quickly for you. What I'm proposing is a second division and instantly at the same time a third division. And crazy as it sounds, the reason for that is I think anyone that is any A-League club or top level club that's going to get relegated, it's not we can't ask a fully professional club to be dropping into a semi-professional league. I think that would kill clubs. Not just the A-League clubs, but any NPL clubs that make it into the A-League and drop out. I mean, you're asking them to fall too far. So I think we need a second division that's fully professional. But at the same token, I don't think it's right that we're asking an NPL club, take Campbelltown City, who've just won the NPL championship, to ask them to instantly, move up promotion-wise into the top level of football and compete with those that have been there with the bigger budgets for years. I think that's too big a leap as well. So the purpose of the third division, or second division, is to create a second tier of professional, fully professional football. The third tier would be, it's that stepping stone. It's the missing link between professional and semi-professional. And then from there, it kind of goes down to the NPL we have now. So that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Sure. And Jake, to go one step or a few steps higher here, why do you think this is important? Like, obviously, the goal here is to get a fully fledged, lots of clubs competing, lots of more players, more opportunity across the board in the sport. Why?
I think it comes back to meritocracy. I think the problem that we've had is this, Australian football's had plenty of issues over the years, but a lot of it always comes down to people not feeling like they are involved or can be involved in the decision-making process, I guess, to some degree or another. I think, it's all about, for me, opening it up and saying, using merit, who should be at the top of the football pyramid. I mean, why? A question that somebody asked me a while ago, which was more of a rhetorical question, but made me think, was, does the success of Australian football depend on having Central Coast Mariners in the A-League 50 years from now? Or put any A-League. Does football in Australia, the success of it in 50 years, depend on having Melbourne Victory in the A-League? And as much as you like to, people say, well, what would happen if Victory get relegated? And, firstly, I don't think that would happen probably, because we're talking about salary, I would talk about salary cap going and all that sort of thing. But to say that all of football relies on these hand-picked teams, 10 clubs, franchises that are in the top league is kind of crazy. So, I think we need to open it up, because also one thing I haven't mentioned, which is really important to this, is, and it ties into one of the other questions you might ask in a minute, Cody, about A-League expansion potentially. But, we're talking about FFA is talking about bringing 2 new clubs in. If we bring 2 clubs into the A-League, we're going through this bidding process. Two groups of investors, people will get to add to Australian football. All of those rejected bids, they don't invest. They don't go, well, we missed out on this, we'll go into somewhere else. They disappear
Into NPL. They don't go into the NPL usually.
They don't go anywhere else. Exactly.
They go to another business opportunity.
Yep, it's lost. Whereas if you open up the pyramid and you say, okay, the 2 top teams from this league, as long as they meet these professional criteria, such as, I don't know what they would be, but, you set it out, you have your own adequate facilities, you've got the level of professionalism in terms of your players that are full-time and wages and whatever the criteria are, they can be decided. But essentially you're saying the 2 teams that win will go up into that level. Well, every team in that league is going to invest to try and become that, be one of those 2 teams. It's instead of having only 2 hand-picked groups of people investing in football in Australia, you get all of them.
Yeah.
Or at least all of those that have ambition of making it to the higher level.
Sure.
And there'll always be clubs that are happy in the second, third, fourth, 7th tier of football, and that's fine as well, because we need them. But to me, it should be open to the point where the clubs or the administrators, the people behind these clubs that have ambition to be at the top level, if they can prove that they deserve to be there through results and through meeting a lot of these other criteria, then why the hell shouldn't they be? Who's to say that the people behind, I'm pick. I'm not naming because I know anything, but why are the people behind Brisbane Roar or behind Newcastle Jets? Why are those people better to be in at the top level of football in Australia than somebody from an NPL team right now? I think it's to say we've got the 10 best possible clubs in our top tier is probably not quite true.
Jake, it's a random question, probably not that important really, but if you had to say a number for a stadium, minimum, you need to have X amount of people to be fitting your stadium. Would you put a number on it? And if so, what would it be?
I was going to say yes straight away. The reason I'm thinking is because I think you'd have to have some criteria around, safety and I'm thinking from NPL point of view. There's a lot of clubs even in Queensland who don't necessarily have it all, fully enclosed or fenced in and that sort of thing. You'd obviously need something a little bit more professional. In terms of a minimum number, I think if you're going to put something on there, a lot of people who are only A-League fans might say something like 20,000, and I think that's too high. I would say minimum. I'd be happy with 2,000 or 3,000. Yeah. If there's undercover seats and there's room for that many people, I mean, I can't even think of the teams now, but weren't there some clubs competing in the European Champions League qualifiers who have clubs that get promoted to the top division in some of the biggest leagues in the world, and they've got room for 5,000 people. I mean, one of the arguments for South Melbourne is that they own Lakeside, or they own the revenue, I guess, that they get from game day. They would earn more from a game if they had 3,000 people turn up than almost every A-League club that had 25.
True.
Because they own their own stadium.
Yeah. Okay.
And anyway.
It was a random little question. Yep. I was going to ask about criteria, Jake. You did mention it there, and it's probably something we don't need to actually go over again, just because it's one of those things you would definitely get into the details another time. You'd need more people thinking about it, and Jake has sort of listed out some stuff in the document. So go and read if you want to read around the criteria. Jake, let's talk money, and I have a feeling you might dodge it a bit, but how... because we've talked about this, I believe, quickly on last week's show. How would the clubs, how would the league, the second, third, even the A-League survive? Like, how much? Where's this money going to come from?
Yep.
How's it going to work?
Yeah, look, it's an important question. It's important, obviously, and it's one of the biggest, or it is probably the biggest barrier to any of this. And it's the first thing that those that are unsure bring up as, or how can we afford that? The reason I can't, when I first wrote this 18 months ago, and if those that find the original document, you'll see there's a section all about this where I talk about, obviously, the elephant in the room, the money, where does it come from, and some of the, maybe call them misconceptions about what it would actually cost. And I put a few ideas out there, and I basically disclaimed they're all saying, I don't know the answer to this, but what I'm trying to say is take a step back and say, too often these conversations, we stop them before we're even started by saying we can't afford it, or we're unique, we don't have the broadcast deal that others do, and whatever else. And for whatever reason, people seem to think that's a good enough reason not to even have the conversation about what should Australian football be aiming for. And I think that's part of the problem. I think if you were to set out a vision for what it could be, you don't start with the constraints that we have right now, because your assumption is that we should be doing more. I mean, to say that we're getting the most money that we possibly can out of government, out of investors, out of broadcast partners, if we're saying that we're at the absolute pinnacle of what we can get money wise, then why are we even talking? Why are we complaining about the FFA and all this? So I think firstly to say, the first thing I would say is we shouldn't be constraining our vision for the future based on what we have right now. We should be saying, in an ideal world, where should we be aiming for? And then let's figure out how to make it work.
Sure. And
probably there's a point somewhere along that kind of continuum that says, this is, what we would ideally like to get to. We can't do it all at once, so let's figure out what's most important and we take steps along the way. As opposed to, we can't afford it, let's not even talk about it. So that's kind of the first thing. And the reason as well I'm not going to give you a full answer, Cody, is because when as I said, I kind of wrote this section when I did it a while ago, and I found that a lot of people started by going straight to that and didn't even read the other stuff, didn't discuss any of the other, I talked all about the J-League and the 100-year plan and the way that they went from a single professional tier like ours to now having the J2 and the J3 league and all that, and how it's all relevant. I went, as I say, 23 pages, and people just like to complain about the one little thing they disagreed with in the money section, which I disclaimed as these aren't the answers, they're just some ideas.
Sure.
So my preference is to take that out and say, look, let's start by saying what Australian football should be, what should we be aiming for, and then let's figure out the money problem after that. So that's my answer, Cody, for now.
But fair to say, surely it's possible though, right?
I think so, yeah. Like I said, I threw out some ideas. Some are bad. I got feedback saying a few of them are terrible ideas. I think some of them are in there, but like I say, we shouldn't be starting with the how much money do we have, therefore what can we do question.
Jake, as you mentioned before, I believe, I'm not very smart, but I have a feeling if you open things up, if there's 2-3 tiers of Australian football, there's 40 plus clubs, and there's a clear, transparent way to the top, I believe you will draw investors. I know there's people around in Queensland football with money, and they're putting it into the NPL clubs, but I bet you could get groups of other people to invest a lot more if there was a clear path to the top and it was achievable. It might take some time, but there's people with money and they've got it to invest into other businesses, into other areas. And I'm betting there would be these people, a proportion of them would be happy to invest into Australian football if there's a chance that one day they could see their little club with everyone's got ego. Everyone loves is happy to put some money if they can see their name and their money go to good use.
And I think as well, I mean, the AAFC, that group that kind of is representing a lot of the NPL clubs around the country, they asked all of their members, I think they ended up with 120 odd clubs all signed up with them. Yep. And they put the question to them, would you support a second division firstly, and then second, it's if there's a financial model that makes sense, and then secondly, would you want to be part of it? And some ridiculously high number of them said yes, we would support it. Not all of them said they would want to go in it, which to me is a good thing. I mean, it tells me that there are clubs out there that want a second division because of what it does for Australian football, even if it's not them. But also, there was something like, of those that said they would go in there or would like to, there was something, I might get my numbers wrong, so somebody can correct me, but it was like 30 or 40 clubs said they would put their hand up. I mean, they've seen the early stages of the financial model that the AFC put together for this second division, their proposed second division. Why would they put their hand up for something that they know doesn't work? I mean, these clubs are saying, we've seen some numbers and we still want to be part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy to me to say we can't afford it, and yet the clubs that would be incurring the costs are saying that they would be okay with it.
Sure. Okay, Jake. What are the what are the major benefits of your vision? Here's the thing. I was at a wedding Saturday afternoon, 3:00, 3:30, and the AFL Grand Final was on. And I've never really been a supporter of AFL or NRL, but I've got to be honest. I was checking the score, and I was kind of unfortunate when I saw the score and how close it was. And I know you're probably ashamed of me of saying it, but I was a little part of me was like, damn, I would have enjoyed watching that game. Maybe it's because I have families, the other side of the family enjoy watching it, and I would have liked to do that. It was more of a social thing, but it's a huge day. It's such a big day. You look at the success of West Coast and some of the AFL clubs, the support they get, and then if you go to overseas to other like the EPL, the big clubs are the big leagues around the country, world. Sorry, my brain's not working this evening. Is that what we're trying to get to? We're trying to get something like that. Is it because you see such potential because of our numbers in juniors that you believe that Australian football can be as big as the AFL financially?
No, I don't think so. I think, I wouldn't say that we can't get there, but I don't think that has to be the goal. I think the simple answer is where we are right now is not, we're not fulfilling the potential that we have as a code in Australia. And we don't, it's not all about getting, 80,000 people into a stadium. It doesn't have to be. I mean, there's very few big football leagues around the world, that get those sort of numbers week in, week out. I mean, I think it just it's more about the fact that we have the biggest participation code in the country by far. We have for a very long time. And there's all of these clubs underneath the A-League, not just clubs, but the people involved in them, the people that, financially backing them, the coaches that want to get a chance at the higher level, the young players that want a pathway and want to become professionals. Yeah. I mean, there's so much potential below there that we seem to be shunting or, kind of putting underneath the rest. The focus seems to be so much on the commercialisation of the game. And maybe actually, Cody, I'm going to go a little bit back the other way. I think what you're talking about, or where your question kind of came from, was that's almost what the FFA seems to be focused on, trying to turn it into the AFL or NRL, at least from a commercial point of view.
Sure.
And I think that's part of the problem. I mean, we're not embracing the things that really make us unique. You know, the fact that we can have promotion and relegation, including the elite level, the top level, and of course it can happen. I mean, to sit back and say that won't work in Australia is ridiculous. I mean, I'm happy to have that conversation with people, but that's one of the things that makes our game unique to what else is on offer in Australia. So to just purely shunt that away and say we're focusing on the commercialisation, I mean, some of these other things that you look at some of the ad campaigns or some of the decisions that the FFA has made over the years that clearly point to trying to turn us into this thing where we're trying to attract NRL and AFL fans and that sort of thing. It's like we have all the people that we can ever need to make this a financially successful sport in the country. If all we do is get people who already play football,
sure,
we shouldn't have to go anywhere near it. So for me, it's not about being the biggest in the country, financially, or people through the gates or any of that. It's about creating a model that lets anybody at any level of the pyramid, the football pyramid, that has ambition, and whether that's a club or a player or a coach or a referee or an administrator. I mean, anybody within football who has ambition should see a pathway to get to the top if they can prove that they are capable of getting there. Okay. And at the moment, we're locked out, I guess.
And okay, what are the biggest? Let's wrap things up with these sort of two questions. What are the biggest challenges for us getting there one day? And do you think we will? Do you think we'll get there?
Yeah, fair enough. Biggest challenge, I think the answer that probably most people would expect is money. I think that's a huge barrier. I don't think it's the biggest issue. I think probably the biggest issue right now is the leadership, and it's the lack of, I'm not sure how to say it, the lack of will maybe for those at the top who are leading the game at the moment. And the current FFA seems to be very conservative and, as I said before, reactionary, and seems to be focused more on the commercial side and trying to turn it into the next level of NRL or AFL or whatever it is. So I think that's probably the biggest barrier right now, is that we don't have people that are who love the game to the point where they are excited about the future. I mean, when was the last time you read something from the FFA, Cody, that got you excited about the future? I don't know. Maybe it was the announcement of the FFA Cup in 2014. I mean, that excited me because it was another step forward. How many of you had that? We have so much opportunity that there should be something already out there that makes people excited for the future and willing to contribute. So for me, it is leadership, biggest challenge, and also then getting everybody on the same page, which there's always going to be different people with different influences or things that they think are important. So it's impossible to get everybody, walking to the same drum. But I think that's what we need. And will we get there? I think we will. I think it's only a matter of time before, whether it's soon with this whole FFA Congress stuff, there've been some more movements in the last day or two around, and tomorrow, Tuesday, so by the time this video comes out, the FFA, the EGM meeting will have, they'll have voted on these changes, and something might be coming. But it's only a matter of time before somebody gets in there in the FFA board as chairman or CEO that has the football background, is excited about the future and starts to push us down that path, I think.
Sounds good, Jake. Well, thank you very much, Jake. Maybe you'll do it one day.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
No, fair enough.
All right, happy just talking about it.
Yeah, happy just talking about it. Well, maybe you need to put your money and your time where your mouth is, Jake.
Yeah.
One day. We'll leave it till maybe it's required and you're sick of being on the sidelines.
Yeah, we'll see how it'll... Yeah, I don't know. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jake, for that. Everyone who's got questions for Jake, who wants to read the document, head to the website, tporankings.com. You'll find a copy somewhere there. We'll sort something out. If not, just get in touch with us via Facebook or wherever you want to get in, Twitter, Instagram, and we can talk to you about it there. I'm sure Jake would love to hear your comments or questions. So if you're watching it on Facebook, please comment in the comments there. YouTube, the same, and podcast, well, however you want to do it. So anyway, that's it for the show. Jake, have you got anything before we wrap up?
No, maybe just as we mentioned next week, probably more than likely our last show of the year. So you've got 1 week, guys, to get any questions in, anything you'd like us to cover as part of our kind of season wrap, season in review. Anything about clubs, anything about the leagues, anything looking forward to next year, or leagues, clubs that you'd like us to add to the rankings next year, anything like that. So anything at all that you'd like us to talk about, please let us know.
Well, thanks very much. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks, Cody.
Thanks, guys, for watching. Catch you next week on the last show for the year. See you later.